Hello, this is David Cherry again. Let me find what I'm trying to find here so I can show you. I don't want to delete too many things. Here we go. This is what I want to show you. I'm not going to really give code out on this, but if you're when you're programming and you're dealing, let's say, with creating spiders, bots, and indexing what you find, or dealing with path names, full path names that, and on Windows, you'll have backslashes. I'm not sure about Unix because I don't have Unix, but I'm assuming it might be slightly different. But you can come up with some problems that will cause you a massive headache. And this is what I want to discuss for remembrance purposes by putting this up. And and also for you as a new developer, especially if you're a new developer, you'll be interested in this stuff. So I would advise you to hang on and look at what I say. Okay, now let me go back here to what I was looking at earlier. Okay, I should have probably done that. Let me see. I'm trying to find where I was at. Forgive me. I want to show you something here. Okay. Yeah, there's what I'm trying to find right there. It'll pop up, and hopefully I won't have problems. Now this is code that I wrote just to do some testing to prepare me to show you what I'm fixing to show you. Okay, and I always go through the code. I'm not a good typer. I'm a copy and paste guy. It makes it a lot easier because in my left hand I have issues when it comes to typing, and I'm working on that, but it takes time. Historically, I was a truck driver for a living since 1991, and so it hadn't had time to fully develop, and now I'm able to develop and do some things temporarily until I'm forced to go get another job to support myself. But anyway, this file, which is this right here, okay, let me see, that's not the one. Yeah, all right, the that I want to show you is to this file here that you see. Okay, and to give you an idea of what I went through to create the file, okay, I want to show you how many lines of code that are in it. Okay, so if I go down here and I base it on the last line, I got 209 lines of code. So I went to a lot of effort to prepare this for you to show you some basic things, but rather than show you the code and how the code works in the file, all right, this is for testing purposes. It will become a part of my operations for writing and creating scripts, directory indexing, which is important when you have a database and you're doing search engines and stuff. And so anyway, we'll go right back here. Okay, now typically when you write a script, all right, that does directory indexing and stuff, typically it's going to have backslashes, and it will look like this right here. Okay, and you'll put it in your database with backslashes. But there's a problem that will arise because with backslashes, under most circumstances, you're going to end up with an error or a problem that's going to cause you a headache, that can cause you wasted time. Okay, and that's what I want to show you here, is how to prevent that wasting time. And so there are general rules that need to be followed. Okay, this video will be a part of a video when I clean it up for people that will work for me as my website grows and I reach that point. And when I reach that point, they will have to read what this video has. So if you're a new programmer, you need to listen to this. Okay, who knows, you may be working with me or for me one day, either as a partner or whatever. All right, but see, anyway, what we're concentrating on is that backslashes, which are used in Windows pass, are okay if you're going to pass it, let's say, as a system command, okay, to like, or if I want to read a file that is a log that will contain a list of directory file name paths like this here, you know, you can probably, you can use it then and read the file and send the information that way, using a shell command, as they would call it, you know, on Linux, I believe it is, and Unix, okay. But rather than get into the technicalities of all that, we're going to skip that right now, okay. But I want to make one thing point out, okay. When you try to print this out on your internet document, okay, when you're doing a search and you read this and you try to print it out, okay, what I've been doing in the past is I just, you know, click a link, pull up the file, and the file will be in a text file format, and I read it, okay. But let's say you have this in a database and you want to delete this file right here, okay. You will not be able to do that because that in PHP will be the incorrect format, okay. And what will happen is, okay, in PHP, if you was to print this out, you will get this right here. You see this right here, what I'm typing out? Well, you see that's malformed, incorrect, okay. And so we're using backslashes, you have problems, and this is what I want to point out, okay. So anyway, let's you talk about various PHP functions. One will be called real path, okay. And so the real path, when you use real path and you're reading a directory, all right, and in that reading of the directory and you use real path, it will show correctly like that, okay. And then you can delete the file, all right. But that's because you're using real path during a directory read operation. It's not stored information, okay. All right. And the same thing when you're doing real path. If you're reading a directory path, okay, you know, you're reading a directory, let's say, you know, using the read directory function, all right, and you're using that and you want to get the real path of the file, it will come up correctly and will display this way, okay. But let's say you're using a variable, okay, you know, and a variable, and if you're familiar with what variables are in PHP, and you try to print it out onto a web document or put it into a file, okay, when you're reading a variable that contains a path name, the full path name of a web document, all right, that's when the problems begin, okay. And so when you're reading, it doesn't matter if the variable's with double quotes, okay, or single quote, it does not matter. You're going to get this, which will create an error, okay. It will create an error. All right. So, but remember this. This is a rule to always remember. If it's in backslashes, you will not be able to copy or move files with PHP. So that's the headache. You have to be able to know how to go about and approach it in the correct way to replace the backslashes with forward slashes in the file. Okay. And I wrote a function, and that function is inside this code here to do it, but I'm not going to get in that right now. You know, so this here will become in the future for future programmers that are learning and developing a necessity to view this file as I update it, okay, and study the code for general programming style on what to do when it comes to programming, so we'll be more successful in doing what we're going to do, okay. So you don't want to see this in a file. You don't want to see this on printed out on a web document when you use echo or a print statement. You don't want that, okay, when you have it on a web document. And as you see me clicking, that is the web document, okay. All right, now, all right, so then, since we know that variable path names, okay, whether single quoted or double quoted, will not appear correctly if it has backslashes, okay. And no, I don't have it up here. The same thing also applies if you use an echo statement or a write statement, okay. The same thing will occur in PHP if you just write out a path name with backslashes. It's going to have something looking similar to this right here, All right, and at the end you're going to have it malformatted with other things, and so that will hinder your operation and make it to where you'll have a headache, a real headache, especially when it comes to database inputs. Okay, now if you use the PHP command, I pronounce it, I don't know the real correct way, I pronounce it get showed, because of this. All right, and so and what that does is when you print it out directly, okay, all right, when you put it out directly, it looks like this. Okay, so let's say I do a change directory function. All right, and I go to another directory. When I go to that directory and doing a change directory function, and I use get showed, which tells me what is the current working directory. That's what this means right here. It will print out correctly. All right, in a file on a web document, but it will present it because I'm doing a directory read operation. All right. Now, I've made this note. All right, and the reason I do it, I did this in this format for reminders. Okay, for myself as well as other people. All right, that with that I can also replace replace backslashes with forward slashes using that. Okay, so let me do a quick repath. When you're doing a directory read operation and you're using real path, okay, at that point you can print out on the web document, okay, the actual path name, and it will appear correctly, okay, but it will not be unusable. It will not be usable if it's in backslashes. So you want to always convert backslashes to forward slashes if you're going to manipulate your path directory. Okay, manipulate files within a directory, or you're doing directory recursion or something, and you want to move, copy and delete files. You're going to have to convert those to forward slashes, like this right here. Okay. Now the same thing also applies to directory name.file. We call that a magic constant. All right, it's part of the global variables, not a magic constant, but part of the global variables. Okay, and so it will print out correctly as backslash, but you want to replace it. Now I'm not going to get into the code showing you. I'm basically giving general observations to help you as a programmer, which is a necessity, especially when it comes to database inputs and when it comes to copying, moving, and deleting files with PHP. Okay, these are things you need to know, because if you don't know them, you're going to spend hours and hours and hours trying to figure out some code, and so you have to have something to help you. So this will be good, and is good for you as a programmer, that I'm making this known to you ahead of time. When you go to a lot of your websites that teach you about copying and making files and using PHP code, I consider it a failure on their part as an after fact point of view, that they don't use full path names to show you the importance of it. Okay, and this even applies to like your HTXS files. Okay, HTXS files, if you want to do an HTXS file, okay, you're going to have the correct path name, so it can access the HT password file, and that's really necessary, and that's another point. Okay, so let's look at my observations that I have made. Okay, all right, right here on this line right here, and let me go ahead and make it bigger. All right, I should have done that earlier. Okay, now unlink will remove files with forward slashes like this right here. Okay, unlink means to delete, and unlink is a PHP built-in function. Okay, it's not a user-made function, it's a built-in function. All right, and so you can unlink files, a file name, with the unlink function in PHP, okay, with forward slashes. Now, unlink will not work for directories. You have to create a directory recursion function that uses the built-in PHP function if you want to delete a directory. But for deleting single files, okay, you want to use unlink. Okay, if you have a function that does directory recursion, if it's going to delete a file, then unlink the built-in PHP function will be in your user-made function, which deletes the directory. Okay, now, so we know the first observation is that unlink will remove file paths with forward slashes. That's the first observation from creating this thing here and doing a lot of testing. Okay, now unlink will not remove file path names with backslashes. It will not do that. Okay, and if you try to do anything like that and then you try to print out the code, then it's still going to give you errors looking like this error right up here that I'm showing you. And that's what you want to avoid, because it will make you come to a screeching halt and you will not be able to do anything. And if you're not aware of these things, you're going to spend hours and hours trying to figure it out. What is going wrong as a new programmer? So as a new programmer, please listen to what I'm saying. Okay, now, all right, so to perform any operation when it comes to moving, copying, or deleting files, okay, you need to have forward slashes in the full path name. And if you don't have forward slashes in the full path name, then you're going to have to convert the backslashes to forward slashes. Okay, so the summary, all right, is right here. I created a little summary for what I just told you. Creating and removing files with forward slashes will work. Okay, that's the summary. So you always need to remember, creating and removing files with forward slashes always works. No problems. And so that's a good reason, and the most important reason why you want to convert a backslash, which comes from directory reading operations, and you do file real path. You need to convert that, okay, to forward slashes. All right. And the reason is that too many errors and wasted time come from replacing backslashes. All right, just simply just do it and not doing what you need to do and not knowing it will create massive, I mean massive errors. And this is why what I'm teaching you and showing you is so important when you want to do things correctly and reduce errors and downtime or research. Okay, now you have a function when you're doing a database insert. Okay, and on that database insert, I use the MySQLi extension. Okay, for Maria database inserts. Okay, and that extension is a MySQLi, or you can call it a for a function that will integrate with Maria database or MySQL. It's called real escape string. Okay. Now you can use that to do what they call escape the string, to make the insert so you can place into the database a backslash from a file read operation, all right, where it will look like this when you're using the real path, but that will make it unusable at a point in the future. Okay, so let's say if you was to write a function, all right, and to make it work using MySQLi, you're still wasting your time in the long run. For the sake of knowing how to do it, that might be okay, and put it back for later reference to make you a better programmer. All right, so but when it comes to MySQL to database inputs, you still need to and must use this on every variable, okay, that goes into the database that will do the proper escape function, so code will show correctly within the database. Okay, you still need to do that. All right, now So when you use that, all right, the MySQLi real escape function will allow you to put the file path with backslashes in the database correctly and be viewable. That's why you want to use that deal. But it also does other things. Okay, and among those things is it'll allow you to escape single quotes. If you try to put a single quote into a database, a single quoted string in a database, it will create an error. Okay, and typically that error will be headers that have already been sent. Okay, now if you don't use that and you have a database input deal where people putting directly into the database and you haven't properly escaped your string, then you're going to have code appear that the client will see that will say headers already been sent, and they'll go, oh, that's not good. All right, and they don't even know what it is, but they know that the error occurred and it doesn't look good. Okay, so we want to avoid things like that. Okay, so when using, we'll go to the next observation. When using functions like get showed or change directory or real path can be real tricky on Windows. So that implies what I'm talking about is Windows. That's what I program on. Okay, all right. And let me see here. I'm not sure why I put this here. I haven't read ahead. Okay. Creating a test log with path names from a function having backslashes and with backslashes and path name will produce a log file looking like this. Okay. So you have the error there again. All right. Now let me slow down and reread what I just wrote to properly say what I was trying to say. Yeah. Okay. What this is basically trying to say is that let's say you have an array and you create an array and you want to write that array of file names to a log file. Okay. And they have backslashes. You're going to end up with this in the log file, regardless of the number of things you have in that array. Okay, and the reason is because, you know, if you are printing array, all right, or a string or a variable with the path name having backslashes in it, and you're not doing an actual read directory operation, you're going to always get this. So you'll never be able to print to file whatever's in your array if it has backslashes. So the main point of what I'm trying to get at is this, and I'm fixing to close this out. The main point I'm trying to get at, the best and only practice you should observe, all right, is making sure that when you are dealing with file path names, which is the full path name like this to a file, you know, it'll be like this right here. File path name is what I'm referring to, something like that right there. All right, you want to make it have forward slashes. Okay, you want to make it have forward slashes. Okay. And the reason is this, because when you read a file, if you want to copy a file, let's say you want to read line 1 and you want to copy the file from one line 1 to another directory location, okay, if it has forward slashes, you'll be able to do that. But if it doesn't have forward slashes, well, you know what it means. As they say, the four-letter word, you're the four-letter word, you know, you messed up. All right? And so this is a must as a programmer to be aware of these things. Okay? All right? And why to be aware of these things. Okay? So if you was to try to create a test log, having an array of file names or a group of variables, and you already have the file path names in your code with backslashes, if you're not doing a directory read operation, all right, then what's going to happen is you're always going to have it not occur correctly. And the other observation is this: when you read a database, you want to have the full path name in the database with forward slashes, so you can grab that, all right, and then turn around and use that to do a file delete operation, which is most likely what you're going to want to do. It has to be in forward slashes, okay? And if you have a group of files that you've written, and let's say you could have a database with a table called index files, all right, that are to be deleted at some point on a certain day, you need to have all those in forward slashes, okay? Now, let me show you something that I wrote a little while back, which is actually today. All right, let me see if I can find what I want. Test logs. No, that's not it. Okay, well, here's a test log, kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about, test log. It's just a simple test log with forward slashes. Now, if I was to read this test log, okay, I would be able to take one by one, if I created the proper function, and I could read the log, copy this file to whatever destination I wanted it to. All right, or I could read the log and delete wherever this file may be. You know they're all the same file names, but that's not necessary. This is just a test log. It's for testing for functions, okay, and it will remain in there because it just helps. It's useful. All right, so that is the test log file. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about a test log file. And so this here is what we call the full path name of the file. Okay, now this right here is called the base name. All right, and so anyway, there's more on that, but that's not what we're talking about. Okay, and so anyway, that was the code. Like I said, if the code that I wrote here for just to do this little tutorial and do some testing. All right, and this will always be a part of my programming and always will remain because it's so useful. I'll have it updated a little bit. Okay, now let me go to this directory here. Nope, that's not it. Blog admin, that's what I'm looking for. All right, those are my test logs. No, that's not it. I know what I'm trying to find, but I forgot where I put it. I may not find it, just give up. I know it's not there. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, I wrote this code and I just put it in my database, so rather than trying to find the file, I'll do it this way. Okay, now when I write code, I put it in the database for future reference so I can find it quickly and not go through what I just went. Okay, and so anyway, the database code here that I'm talking about is a function to replace backslashes and log. Okay. And so anyway, with that function, what the function basically does is I have a test log, which is what I just showed you, and that test log will have the name testlog1.txt. And so for each test log, I do that. If you notice, I have the test log here. I have a variable defined. My variable name is test log. It's defined right here. Okay, all right, and I pass that through here. All right, and so anyway, I want to, what this program will do, the one I just showed you, that text log, I think it had forward slashes, but let's say it had backslashes. Okay, well, I want to replace those where I can make it usable. This is the function that did it right here. This is the function that replaced the backslashes in the log file. So let's say you're doing a you're doing a search on a website, or even on your own website, you're doing like a broken link search or whatever. You're logging files on your website, as I mentioned earlier. Okay, this is the function you want to use, all right, that will take the backslashes and take the backslashes and turn them into forward slashes so you can perform file operations for like deleting, copying, and moving, or even renaming a file. Okay? And so the most important part of it is, well, actually there's several things. You have to create a new array. Okay? So the new array lets me know when I read the code that it's going to be a new array for something until I start looking at the code more. And this is how you define an array in PHP. So I gave it new array. Okay. Now I want to use the built-in function from PHP, which is get file contents. When it gets the file contents, it appears as a string. All right. So I do this. I defined a variable and called it file string to remind me that I'm dealing with a file. Okay. Now, when you're using file get contents, you want to explode the file into an array so you can perform operations on the array. So the next thing I do is I explode the file into an array using the PHP built-in function, which is called explode right here. Okay. All right, so the first parameter, this function has two parameters. Okay, the first parameter is what I want to use for the delimiter when I explode it, when I read the file. All right, and so I just put a backslash and an N, which is for a new line. I want to read the file line by line. Okay, all right, and then to make sure that I get, and then this here is the file string. Okay. All right, and that, so that goes from here to here. All right. Then once I perform the explode, I want to iterate through the array to perform an action. I like using for each. Okay, the for each statement in PHP, they call it for each statement. So for read an array. So I take for each file array, because at this point here, all right, the string becomes an array. All right, if you notice, I use, file array here. All right, so the string now becomes in a file array. All right, and so for each file array as line, that lets me know I'm dealing with a line. Okay, all right. Then I perform the actual content of replacing the backslash with a forward slash with this right here. Okay. And I left this in here to remind me that you can have issues with replacing backslashes, okay? All right. Then once I have replaced, all right, the backslash, okay, if you remembered, I created a new array. What was the array for? What I want to do is I want to put into the new array, which is empty, because this is defined as an empty array right here. I want to put into this new array one by one each line of the file. Okay, and so by doing that, by using the PHP built-in function array unshift, okay, we'll put a new element into the array at the beginning of the array. Okay, in other words, when you're doing that, the array will appear in ascending order, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so you want to be the beginning of the array. Now, arrays are always indexed as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I'm using a built-in PHP function to add an element to the beginning of an array. Okay, all right. So in order to do that, okay, I use this here, all right, which is one line of each file, okay, and I put it put it over here, because the unshift function has what we call two perimeters. Okay, the first is the perimeter of the array that you're pushing onto, and the second perimeter is the content that is going into the array. Okay, then I push it into the array. Now the next step, all right, is what I've done is I've already removed the backslashes, and I've converted the backslashes. Okay, but I want to put it into a file. So then what I have to do is turn around and rejoin the array. Okay, so I can make it a string to put it into the file. And so what I do is I use new array, okay, which reminds me that this is the array I'm using up here, you know, and basically this becomes what we call an alias in PHP, all right, of this array, okay, but it's the same name. Okay, so it's an alias of the same name. And so what I basically do then is I want to implode or join the elements together as a string. All right, all right, and then so this here is now a string. Okay, then the next function I'm going to use in PHP is file put contents, and this will allow me to take the original contents of the file where it was line by line with backslashes, put it back into the file, overwrite the old file where everything will have in the same order that was there, okay, but with forward slashes. So it can be used at a later point for copying, moving, or deleting files or whatever you want to do, okay. And then so file put contents has two perimeters, okay. One is the file, the first perimeter is the file name that you're using, okay. So, and then the second perimeter, okay, is the string, okay. And so this new array here is actually a string, as you remembered. And so by doing that, it puts everything back into the array, which is where I showed you, you know, the test log where it had forward slashes, okay. And so I didn't intend to show you code, but I never can get around it, can I? All right, and so anyway, the function, all right, the function name is right here. Okay, this function has one perimeter, and that perimeter is the name of the file. Okay, and the file is defined by a variable, and it's called test log1. Okay, and so I define the file up here. All right, and then I have this. All right, so this is the code to create it. Now, there's one thing missing from this code. You can copy this code. All right, you can type it out, and if you hit it with your directory browser, you know, later on, it's not going to do a single thing, because you know what I didn't put in this code? A programmer should know this, okay? I didn't invoke the function itself. So this script here has no function invocation in it. It has a function right here, but you can't use the function without a function invocation. All right, I have defined the variable that is passed through, all right, here, okay. This function requires one variable, so you have to look for the variable, so the variable's up here, okay. So where would the function invocation go? The function invocation will go right here, which, you know, I have no tabs showing unless it's showing on the video. Well, basically that's it, okay, what I wanted to show you. Okay, so let me go back here. That's my database right here where I put all my code. All right, and so the reason I'm showing you that is basically this, okay. Why it was important to understand that file path names with backslashes, all right, what they will do is they'll do this. Too many errors. I have to retype that out because I just redone this, okay, and wasted time from replacing backslashes. You know, you can really waste time. This is why it's a necessity as a programmer, especially a beginning programmer, to understand these things. And so if you look at this video and you remember it in the future and you come up with a problem, okay, all right, you read and look at it, okay, you'll see that already had documented. What I haven't seen anyone put up is that using real path on current script name will produce this. I haven't seen that on the net. Using real path after replacing backslashes will look this. Okay, I hadn't seen on the net anything showing a variable with double quoted path names will appear like this. See, that's why this is so important, is because as a programmer you need to know these things. And so by looking at this, this gives you a general overview of what works and doesn't work and then I give you my observations from creating the file that I've written. Okay, and if you remember these things, or you have this file, which eventually I'll put on the net and I'll rewrite it for future people, but it might take me months to get to it because I got so much I'm doing. All right, but if you go back and watch this video and you look at it and you go, oh, I wrote this program, but why can't I replace these backslashes? What is the problem here? Well, this is your key. This code is your key. As you noted in some of my videos, I have the code. So what that means is I have the code, but what it also means is that I will get the code one way, however it may be in the future. I will get the code, okay? Because I am code driven. I am code, okay? I am about code, okay? Doesn't regard what the language is, okay? And PHP, Visual Basic, Net, C#, you know, I have it somewhere, but you know, like I said, due to errors I made in programming and not correctly doing certain things, I had to learn the hard way, and now I am paying it. But I was one man on my own writing code, okay, with lots of backups, but you know, and having to deal with that as well. So anyway, I just want to say thank you for watching my video, and I wish you the best. And so always remember this right here, okay, is what I wanted to show you. All right, is the key to finding the code, okay? So let me give you a little tip right here. Let me see if I can find it. All right, now this is my local host, okay? Let me find this right here. We're gonna go to my website, CompuNet.com. Okay, now this here is not working right now. I do have a search engine, but when I upgraded my server, all right, the search engine, due to depreciated code and upgradation of my PHP version, no longer works. So I have to rewrite a lot of the functions in that search engine. So my search engine is down in many ways. Not all of it, it's down. That, you know, I can't put it up for you guys. Okay. Now, what you want to do is go to my website called Programming Tips, and I'm going to show you something that's pretty interesting. All right, and this is the page here. Now, some of this I have to rewrite, okay, you know, for the database function. But when you come to my Programming Tips, all right, what you want to do is you know, click this button right here, so you get to page 1, and that way you can do, as I say here, page by page, see what I got, okay. I had to rewrite the database because I was severely hit. As you heard me talk about, I went from having over 5,000, almost 6,000 pages of code in my database, and I got hit due to, at first I thought, oh my God, I'm being hit, you know, by you know, people that are hacking my computer. And there are cases where I have found they had hacked my computer by going to my logs in the computer. But the majority of the times, my real problem came from what we call spiders and bots, not following what we call robot text laws, okay? And so if I didn't have in my deal the necessary things written because I didn't think about it, and so I learned from the hard school of Knox, and so I ended up having about 5,000 pages of code in the database that I'm rebuilding right now that you see here, okay? And trying to upgrade it from a previous database, which was a MySQL database, to a Maria database. The encoding created some problems, so I had to delete a lot of stuff from that. And then at the same time, I had to redo some things within the tables and the indexes of the tables. In other words, column length, variable text, and all that. I had to reset some of the values within that to match what I was currently doing. So sometimes you'll go through this and you'll see a truncated string right here, or what I mean by truncated string is, you know, it's like you'll see that, like here, search ... and you might find, you know, part of the word missing. I'll get that to eventually. So you just read both columns. The page name and page description will show you the page description. All right. Now, let's say, what was I trying to think of earlier? All right, replace. Oh, by the way, because of the spiders and bots, I probably lost about 10 gigabytes of information because I had information from 10 years of storing information and learning to reach my goal. I'll get it back, but it's going to be slow. Anyway, so let's say I want to replace forward slashes. Type it in, and I go this way, and it'll get there. Hopefully, I didn't lose my enter right. I'm going to say forward slashes. Let me just type in forward. All right. That's not it. I hope I didn't hide the file on my deal. And we'll just go to the end, because I know it's there for right now. All right. So yeah, I'll go to the end. Okay, so you want to type in backslashes. I probably had it typed in with a single code. So you know, certain words can have spaces on it depending on what the purpose is. So let me just type it in this way and see if it shows. Make sure it'll show correctly for you in the future. All right, backslashes. All right, PHP user made function to replace backslashes in log file. So if you want to see the file and you want to copy the code, okay, all you have to do is come to my website, type in the word backslashes, and then you'll find the function right here. Okay. All right. Now sometimes you'll actually see code in live code. Okay. So from here, all you have to do is copy this. Okay. Now there's some things I need to do to update the database, but I want to show you something else that you really may be interested in. All right, and why you should come to my website as well. Okay. Now let's type in live code. All right, you see this says live code. Most of the time, all right, the live code will be bold. It may be on page name. It may be here. You know, like I said, you know, I'm just doing as much as I can. But the live code is basically this. Okay, is that when you go to the website, well, I don't want to do modify time. Let's do the PHP date and time function. I'm not sure if this actually will do what I'm thinking, but PHP date and time format. All right, and you'll see this here, example output or something like that, and it has an underline link. That means you can actually see the code in operation. All right, and so see there, so that's the code in operation. So that's what I mean by live code. Okay, so when you come to the site, all right, you can copy the code here. If you want to see the output of the code, all right, I put live code, and that's for myself primarily, but it's very useful to you because you'll actually see the code in operation, whether it be PHP, JavaScript, jQuery, when I start putting jQuery in there, okay, and etc. All right, now, one other thing I want to show you is why you might want to come to my website, all right, at compunet.com, and you'll see here, make sure you type it in with the forward slashes. Due to the upgrade, I have yet to reconfigure my server to do it where you don't have to have the backslashes. But if you don't use the backslashes, you will not be able to, not backslashes, if you don't use the 3 W's World Wide Web, all right, you know, in other words, you got to add in www.compunet.com and make sure you have this in the address bar. Okay, you want the HTTPS because I am a secure server. All right. All right, now let me show you something that I think you might be interested in. Okay, so let's go back. All right, and now let's type in uploaded. Now you see this right here, uploaded? What that means is, all right, so right here, PHP match words with single quotes. All right, now what I did is, we'll go view it. You see here a download link, download file. All right, that's what uploaded means. So in other words, if you want to download the code, or I felt it was important enough to save it for future use or download for myself or for somebody else, then I have the file there downloaded. 99% of the time, the file will have a file extension of .php because I'm concentrating on PHP code right now. All right, so it will be PHP. And so if you're using PHP and you click on it 90% of the time, depending on how you configured your server or the server of whom you're putting your files on, all right, that PHP code will not execute. Okay. Now, if you're using active state PHP and everything's configured, that's like a regular Windows executable. Be sure, whatever you do, that you're aware of your server and its configuration before you ever click a file. Okay, because it could actually operate as an actual executable file. Okay, and if you execute it and you don't know what's in the file, it can delete files. It can cause you a lot of problems. But most likely you won't have to worry about that, right? Okay. And so anyway, I just wanted to show you how to use the website. Okay, so you go to www.compunet.com, you go to programming tips, and you type in the word you're looking for. And you might have to try it several ways to find the file. As you remembered, I had a problem, finding it. Okay, but anyway, so if you want to know the code on how to replace backslashes in a file itself, okay, then let's try this real quick, see if it works again like I'm thinking. Slash. I'll just do backslash. That's probably better rather than the ES. All right. Didn't show. I wonder if I put a forward. Did I do forward? Let me try it. That's probably what I did. I bet it's maybe case sensitive. There we go. It's case sensitive. Okay, so you want to try it with uppercase and forward case. I didn't realize I'd done that. Okay. So anyway, because it's case sensitive, try the word in both uppercase and lowercase, and then you can find the code right here. I'll put a direct link to it, when I can get time to it. But that's function replace backslashes, and that's how it works. And all you have to do is do like this. You select the code by doing right click, then you do left click on your mouse, and then you do copy, and then you can copy the code into your file and put a file extension name on it, .php. So I'll go ahead and do a recap of what we were doing earlier. Let me go back to here, see if I can find what I want. Okay, recap, okay, is these things are important to remember right here. Extremely important when you're programming, because you don't want this to appear when you're trying to create a file for moving files. Okay, or you don't want that appear in that way in your database, which makes it unusable. Okay, so you always want to remember, okay, all right, this creating and removing files with forward slashes will work, but it will not work, all right, in 99% of the cases unless you're doing an active directory read function. Okay, and in that actual directory read function, when you're reading directories and stuff, all right, and you're using real path, okay, and you're using get code, or this right here, or changing directory. Any other time, it's not going to work. It's going to cause you a headache. So as a general practice, always, use forward slashes. And this is what I'm here to remind you. I thank you. I wish you a good day. And I just want to say be blessed. And I hope what I have shared with you is useful, and that you enjoyed it. Oh, that was the wrong key. All right, F10.